All right, guys, so welcome to this edition of Practitioner Spotlight. Today, I'm going to be talking to two of our practitioners. We are talking to Dr. Dylan Walker of College Station, Texas, and we're also talking to Samantha Waskett, who is a kinesiologist, a coach, and personal trainer. Now, we're just going to be having a bit of a chat about the kind of things that you've been working on recently, any client cases that are springing to mind, and just give people watching this an idea of how you integrate the things that you've always done and what you've always known with some of the new stuff that you've learned from us, and just to kind of just discuss any sort of real world applications that you're experiencing on a daily basis with your clients so we can share that information with the rest of our audience. So Samantha, why don't we just start talking to you and just see, what is it you've been working on recently? Was there any client cases that spring to mind that you'd like to talk about?
Yes, one of my favorite ones, well, I have two favorite ones, is one is a guy who, he's just an athlete. He's never been a professional athlete, but he's just very athletic. And years ago, he was snowboarding in BC, helicopter skiing, and he went off, apparently, what's the biggest jump in Canada, and took it with too much speed. Apparently, the guy he was skiing with said he was at least 30 feet up in the air. Did a flip and landed on the back of his head, his neck, and then just kind of rolled. So he kind of sandwiched and ended up with his head by his thighs. Broke several thoracic vertebrae and a cervical vertebrae, and so this was maybe 20 years ago, and has been in chronic pain ever since. It took 2 hours to get off the mountain, and they didn't realize he'd broken any vertebrae. And he's just a really tough guy, so he just accepted that he was going to be in pain all the time. And I started working on him, and his shoulders were kind of all wonky, and started with that, and then went to the vertebrae, and things just kind of in his back went click, 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 and his posture suddenly got that nice curvature. It was very, very flat. So from his butt up to his neck, it was almost like a straight line instead of the proper curves in the back. And everything just all suddenly came together. And I was exhausted, he was exhausted, so we left it at that. The next day he messaged me and said he didn't realize how much pain he had been in until he was out of pain. And wow. Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. And he still mountain bikes, crashes, goes back into pain, and I go back and get everything back in order. But I would never have been able to do that before.
What did you do? I have to jump in and just say, what was it? I mean, that's a crazy response for something to occur in a session. What were you doing?
What was I doing? I was, well, I started with the master folder and found some endocrine stuff and some viscerosomatic and did that. And it kind of, well, first of all, it was very hard to get him online. I think it took me 15 minutes to get him online, and just went through everything over and over and over again, and finally got him online. Then just started from the top down, and then from there, it was just working around the collarbone, first of all. Like I was getting findings in every muscle around the neck and the collarbone. And I think when all of that was relieved, the collarbone shifted, first of all. It just kind of, everything dropped, and his head was able to come, like he has quite a long neck, so his head was kind of pulled forward and down a bit, because I think everything here was very, very tight. And then I went to the thoracic spine, and yeah, just started working around through the ribs, the spine, the diaphragm, and everything just kind of went boom. I think the diaphragm was a big thing.
Diaphragm would have been a huge one in that. I mean, good for you. That's an amazing response. And sounds like that he's a bit of a badass who's going to continue to to break himself, and then kind of you have to pick up the pieces. Let's just switch over to Dylan for a second. So something that you mentioned there was getting a client online. So anyone who's a practitioner will appreciate that term. What we're talking about is using the feedback of a muscle test to gain information from the system, and the person, we say, has to be online for that to happen. So Dylan, is that something you find that there's some people are hard to balance their bodies in the first place to get a response out of them for muscle testing? How do you deal with that?
Actually, no. I traditionally don't have issues with getting people online. Of course, a lot of the first things that I would do with my clients is trying to remove background noise out of the system. So no, traditionally, I don't have issues with getting people online.
I think one of the things to consider when it comes to working with somebody and you're using muscle testing, it's not often spoken about, but I've tried to put it out there a lot in different lectures and in the groups, is this whole thing about grounding and earthing the body, and how when we're in contact with the ground outside, the electrical charge of the body will equilibrate with that of the earth. And when you can, if you can't go outside, like if you're in Canada or if you're in the UK right now, the weather kind of sucks and it's not great. But if you can earth the body by having a grounding pad and you plug that into the mains, or ideally you plug it into the ground outside, and you put the barefoot contact on that for the client, the charge in the body, kind of the noise in the body, drops and dissipates a little bit already. But I think in Sam's case there, with all of that damage to the spine and all of that stuff going on, that was probably where those central pattern generators are held, being in the thoracic spinal cord, relative to the gate mechanism that we like to balance before we start working with people. That was probably kind of shot in that particular case. So Sam, let's just go back to you for a second.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back. So in that particular case, you're talking about a guy who'd been in a severe accident, and
yes.
then he must have been through some kind of long-term traditional sort of rehabilitation program.
Yes, he saw a lot of physios and a lot of chiropractors. I think the best result he'd had was with chiropractors prior to that. But he said this was the most dramatic thing. And I sort of wonder that there's probably an accumulation of help in a way. Like if I had seen him without him having seen all those other people, maybe I wouldn't have gotten so dramatic result. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, who can say? But that's a great point. I mean, a lot of the time, I mean, I, for instance, have been the end of the road guy for quite a few clients for many, many years. And it's funny when you're in this game for a long time and you start learning all the different methodologies to help people, and you get success a lot of the time, you do become that person. And it's a great point. I mean, all the therapy that someone's been through can't have been useless, right? It can't have been a complete waste of time. There must have been good things that were happening, but maybe it wasn't getting down to the main symptom, the main thing they suffer with, which of course, a lot of the time is chronic pain. And that's something we have to actually look at fairly specifically.
Yes, and I forgot to mention, I was using a lot of ventral horn with him. That was basically the main thing I was using was ventral horn, and that's what seemed to do things for him.
Tip it over the edge. It's that accuracy of changing things at the level of the spinal cord. So Dylan, let's just go over to you, buddy. So we've heard about an incident there where there's been a severe accident and then a lot of damage, sort of apparently, mechanical deformation to the body. What's the typical sort of things you've been working with recently, or anything that springs to mind? What's the classic kind of thing you tend to work with?
Well, we have a lot of chronic disease over here. So one of my cases that I've really interested in right now is Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
And so retired professor, sleeps a lot during the day, has muscle fasciculations characteristic of Parkinson's disease, a low volume to his voice, and just, overall is not doing well. And so the one thing that I think is pretty cool, I've been able to help with him in terms of when he comes to see me, are the muscle fasciculations. In terms of them essentially stopping when he leaves our session. And this has been attributed to a couple of things that I've found mostly when it comes to that is emotional motor system and then limbic issues. he had, within a 1-year span, his intellectual father passed away, and he was up for tenure. So 2 pretty huge events going on within a year's time. And for the most part, everything has been correlated back to those events. And when I do that, essentially his fasciculations cease.
So that's, you're describing so 2 major events that definitively affected the psyche of this individual, and you're tracing back symptomology in the body to those particular events every time you work with this guy. That's incredible. So what so on a daily basis, what does he deal with this kind of disease, and what and how is he changing as you go through this process?
Yeah, so obviously everything we're doing in the sessions is helping, but I send him home with a ton of homework, as I'm calling it. His, what he sees at home is it's the tired, before he came to me, the tiredness. So taking naps during the day just because he's falling asleep, the fasciculations, he shuffles his feet, poor balance, low volume of voice, low energy, poor sleep. And so everything that I'm doing, reducing background noise in his system, working on those particular events. And then the homework that I give him is basically lifestyle factors, which one of them is sunlight and grounding. And he began to essentially thrive on the sun. Like if he doesn't get sunlight, he misses it. He feels that he misses it. And
that's of course the dopamine, right? The dopamine that is released from the fact that we're exposing the retinas to
absolutely sunlight. I mean, yeah. And then the endorphins, so they make you want to go back outside and get more sun. And this person I've been working with him for 2 months now. And he's a different person. He doesn't fall asleep, take naps during the day. He has so much energy. He's essentially stopped shuffling. He doesn't have very many fasciculations anymore. The volume of his voice has come up, and he has better posture. Recently, we've been working on balance, and he's telling me that whatever I'm doing is making a huge difference. And so we've also got, other lifestyle changes going on, the way he eats, a good regimen of magnesium, among other things. And he's changing significantly.
That's fantastic.
Just the way he carries himself, his volume of voice. I can have music playing in the background during our session, and I can still hear him. Whereas before, I had to make sure that it was super quiet in the room so that I could hear him. And this is
cool.
quite remarkable.
Absolutely. So Samantha, if we just come back to you for a second, we're hearing Dylan talk there about a case of a severe disease process, a ongoing kind of chronic condition that I think I should just say here, as we always do in these things, that we are not in any way diagnosing any conditions. We're not claiming to be able to treat specific diseases. But at the end of the day, people who need help sometimes seek you out, and you can say at the start of a session, at the start of the process, be very open with these people and say, listen, I can try and see how we can help your body to normalize in some way. But we're not claiming to treat any specific conditions, right? So Samantha, do you have anyone come to you with things that we've heard about? Obviously a severe accident, that's pretty intense, where someone comes with that amount of back pain and that amount of mechanical deformation. But has anyone else sort of come to you with things that you've had to sort of take a step back and just say, well, look, we can have a go, but I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know, what's going to happen in this.
Yes, I've had several people who've had strokes. One of them asked me not to talk particularly about her, but strokes that have changed movement and speech and memory, and have been having little improvements with them in the way they walk. One woman who I'm allowed to talk about, she would have, well, her whole left side was affected and she was dragging her foot. She had very short-term memory, so it was very hard to do very much with her, because even giving her direction on what to do was difficult because she would forget very quickly. But even just doing eye cicadas with her really helped with her walk. So she would have little moments where we did a lot of stuff on the treadmill or around the house, like just very basic stuff. And I would do different eye cicadas with her, and suddenly it was like her body remembered, and she would take off at the speed that her daughter told me she used to walk at, and then kind of realize that something was wrong and stop, and then it would all go away. And I could do little, maybe 30 seconds of really improved walk with her, but not too much, because if I overexhausted her, then it was almost like she'd go backwards. And I could use, it was very hard to do ventral horn stuff with her. It was hard to test because it was hard to get her to do any resistance until I started testing on myself. So I think you had told me if we're in bare feet and I put my foot on hers and then test myself. So I started to be able to do that. And I was able to relieve a lot of the back pain she was getting and a lot of the shoulder pain she was getting, just because her posture has totally changed from a left side that's not working as well.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool indeed. So let's just shoot back over to Dylan for a second. There's a point raised up that I think we can discuss a little bit, Dylan. Some of this stuff, when people hear it, they can think, very subjective, sounds a little kind of out there, a little bit too left field for some people. And granted, it is strange, but we do try and provide that, that bioelectrical rationale, the fact that all electrical impulses in the body generate electrical fields. When you have electrical fields, you have electromagnetic fields. And those are a source of information that we can play with and find, we can find information from that we can do things with. That's essentially what we're trying to say with this process. What would be great, obviously, that would help everyone in this would be data points, right? Being able to have something less subjective that shows pre and post changes and things that have occurred in someone. I know with one of my other practitioners, we're doing some stuff where we're getting some pre and post EMG work done, some surface EMG stuff where he has data already that's showing there's marked improvement in EMG readings from AMN treatments. I know that we can definitely show stuff with coherence, so heart coherence. And I know you and I have discussed before about the use of bioimpedance assay machines. Do you want to comment at all on maybe, I mean, you're a research scientist, you're someone who's kind of got a foot in both worlds here. You're someone who does a lot of more kind of classical research-based stuff and what we do, whatever we want to call that, just another way of doing things. So what would, I know that's something you're interested in with the bioimpedance assay measurements, and I know we've discussed it before. What would you say would be something you'd be potentially expecting to see as a result of doing AMN treatments where we work bioelectrically and we tap on bones and we release charge and all that sort of stuff?
I mean, just from a hypothetical standpoint here, I mean, expect to see essentially less, using a biological impedance, less resistance and more conductance. Honestly, that's what, because I'm playing around with using your approach just to kind of get a sense of what current is like in the body of my clients anyway. So to me, I think that would be kind of those two key points would be something I would be interested to seeing first, conductance and then resistance, especially from the use of the biological impedance.
Yeah.
I'm playing around with, current, college and DC current. I'm playing around with mitochondrial electron tunneling speeds, seeing what I can do to affect those. and then how's the client responding to that. So it would be, to me, it would be nice to have those kind of numbers to see if it actually lines up with what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
myself.
Yeah. It would be great to have those data points, wouldn't it? So just show kind of more, I mean, data's data, right? You can't, it doesn't
Yeah.
lie, and it kind of solidifies things a little bit and takes away some of that subjectiveness from a muscle test. And I think it's important to say also, which I always try to say, we don't look at muscle testing as a diagnosis or
Right.
anything that you're gaining any more information from, apart from the fact that you're finding components of a problem. And it would appear that when those things are put together, we call it stacking those things together, and we calibrate the system where we allow electricity to flow through the system and to normalize what is most likely altered charge in collagen molecules, which are everywhere in the body, that you see positive results, right? We're not saying it's a diagnosis or anything like that, but it'd be great to get those data points as well.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha, if I just come back to you for just a couple of minutes. I know also that you have worked with a lot of elite athletes or high-level athletes in cycling, is that right?
Yes.
And you showed us briefly just before we started a little home gym behind you there. How much movement stuff do you incorporate and training work do you incorporate with your work?
Quite a bit. I can't help not do it. It's something that's kind of ingrained in what I've always done. So sometimes when I'm working with someone and I'm working specifically to improve movement, I'll get them to, even with the people who do stroke, I'll get them to walk and walk mindfully. The athletes, I get them to do stretches, see what's happening, also how they're feeling in their body. I find athletes are so attuned to their body that if you get them to start moving right afterward, doing what they're used to, if it's a cyclist getting on their bike and trying to improve their pedal stroke or how they feel on their bike. Intuitively, I feel like that makes everything stick a bit better, and they can feel the difference really quickly. So there's always like a learning going on, right? So if you have them moving more fluidly and better right afterward, they're gonna remember that and learn from that, and things will improve.
Absolutely. It actually reminds me when I was working in more sort of a gym-based setting or a health club-based setting, if I ever had never a lot of professional athletes, but high-level amateur athletes coming down, tennis players and stuff, and I get them to bring their rackets so that they could then, once they've done some work, they could then move fluidly around and kind of just mirror what they're doing on the court. So they, like you say, so they can actually get feedback and go, oh, wow, that's precisely what I couldn't do an hour ago, and it feels way better. And then they're excited and they want to get out and they want to play. And I think that's all a major part of the process. So Dylan, let's just nip back to you for a second. I know you're opening your own facility right now, so you're in the midst of trying to get that to happen with Biosystems Fitness. I love seeing what you put on Facebook and all the posts you bring up. How much movement is incorporated into what you do with people? I know you are exercise physiologist and a trainer and all of these other things. So how much movement do you include when you work with a client?
Well, it depends on the client really, and what we're trying to achieve. Most of my clients are coming to me because they want to get fit. So, and sometimes I won't let clients immediately go into a lot of movement, just depending on their presentation. If it is something, if it's specifically a pain case that comes to me, once we get them out of pain, then I try to start incorporating some of the complex stuff, complex movements that we've learned from you guys to help facilitate change. And if it's something, if the process is pretty robust in these clients, then I start getting them into the warm-up sequence that you guys put out, because I have used that since the first day I saw that warm-up sequence you guys put it out. I've used it nonstop, and so typically that's what I'll get clients going into, is that warm-up sequence, and then from there, depending on how they're doing, I'll start incorporating them into our fitness training, which is basically body weight, complex movement, maybe a little bit of cardiovascular, nothing too crazy, but something that they can handle, and certainly something that's not going to bring back any of the issues that we were working on.
Sure. Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you both today. It's been some great insights as to what you're doing with people, and maybe some inspiring stories as well for other people out there who may feel a bit broken and looking for help. So if anyone does want to get in touch with you, Dylan, let's start with you. What would be the best way to get in touch with you to book a session at your new facility?
You can go to my Facebook page, Biosystem Fitness, and there's a book now button, or you can visit my website at biosystemfitness.com.
Cool, good stuff, man. Thank you so much. And Samantha, if anyone wants to get in touch with you to come and get your services and get some help, how would they do that?
Yeah, they could get in touch with me over my Facebook page, which is La Vie en Forme Outdoor Fitness, or by email, which is, my last name's hard to, it's sforskett@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, guys, I appreciate your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'd love to do it again sometime, so please keep up the good work, and I shall speak to you both soon.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.